Digital audio health by Symatrax.
Welcome to the Rhonda Grant Show with your host, Rhonda Grant. If you believe that there is more to life than what you see right now, and you want to find out more, listen in as her guests share their journey and their extraordinary experiences. Now, here is your host, Rhonda Grant.
Welcome to the Rhonda Grant Show. Sometimes the universe has a way of placing people or obstacles in your path to help guide and direct you on your mission. Listen in as we discover the path my guest has traveled. Has he been inspired by a calling, crafted his journey, or a bit of both? I invite you to embrace the conversations and to use them to help you recognize if this is happening in your life. Our guest today is Lomakayu Miller, who lives in the Verde Valley near Sedona, Arizona, in Old Town Cottonwood with his dogs Beauty and Sundance, who are his devoted helpers. Lomakayu is a soul dreamer in the shamanic tradition and the originator of primordial movements in an intuitive body-based technique for aiding emotional movements of the soul. Lomakayu means everything finished well. Clay studied English and philosophy at the UC Berkeley and is the author of Medicineofone, One Noble Truth, and the companion to The Power of Your Subconscious Mind by Joseph Murphy, discussion and guided affirmations. He is a highly sought after voice for audible recordings. I met Clay's voice when I had downloaded an audiobook, and I have been a fan of his ever since. I would log into Audible to search his name and to buy a book that he had narrated. Today, I am pleased to introduce Lomakayu to the Rhonda Grant Show. Clay, please tell us more about Medicine of One.
The Medicine of One, which is the sort of umbrella of everything that I do.
Mm-hmm.
And you are the medicine of one. When you are just simply in your quiet, open, here presence, like when you sit in a beautiful place, like is around here in Sedona, and you're quiet and you're empty and you're just really here. Mm-hmm. It's your I am, in a sense. So your relaxed I am is the medicine of one. And so I use the shamanic tools of journeying and various energetic things to help bring people into that sense of connection with themselves and to bring them into what they want. I use the circle a lot too, to talk about who you really are. So the circle is open and spacious, mm-hmm. Like a sphere, like the sky. And so the way we survive is to contract. Everything we do to survive is a contraction. Even mm-hmm. thinking is contraction. And so we collect our history through these contractions. And in a sense, you could say one of the things I do called the soul journey, which is where the soul dreamer aspect comes in, is that I get a sense of what I always want to know what a person wants. What do you want?
Right.
How do you want to feel?
That's a hard question, though, because a lot of people really don't know what they want.
Right. So sometimes that's the first thing. Mm-hmm. They don't know. Well, usually they know what they don't want, though.
Okay.
They know what they don't want to feel anymore. They know how they don't want to behave anymore. So that usually leads you to what they want. So if a person is always, say, angry mm-hmm. and can't get out of that loop, clearly that's not a peaceful state. So what they really want is peace. And it's a feeling, not just an idea. Mm-hmm. It's a whole state. So let's say I flush out 4 things that a person wants, sort of like in the 4 directions. It might be peace, trust, freedom, to speak my truth then.
Okay.
And so knowing what they want, I go, okay. So everything, if for all these things to come through you in a balanced state, imagine that who you really are is that circle, and you want to live at the center where these come through you. Mm-hmm. But because you've collected all these past movements that keep pulling you out of the center, that have an energy that you don't like. We must free all these things you want are actually trapped in them. And so we must journey through them energetically to free you from your history, so you can live at the center, and what you want is freed from inside of you. It's not, it's already there. It just gets trapped. So, yeah, the biggest thing of everything I do is that medicine of one and how to move through life. And the shamanic part of it is just the best way I can describe the skills and gifts that I have to help people do that. Otherwise, in many ways, I don't really indulge in what a lot of people associate with shamanism. So it's all between me and them. I don't rely on a lot of stuff.
Right. A lot of stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, in my 30s, I was listening to, you said a word there called in your center. And I was listening to, it would have been an audio tape back then. Stephen Covey was talking with Tony Robbins, I believe it was, on an audio tape. And he said, the one who sits in the center, in the middle, knows. And I was not at the point where I was enlightened enough even to know what the heck he was talking about. And I remember rewinding the tape to listen to it again. And I couldn't figure out what he meant about center. But I know what the center is today. It's the center of us. It is really our heart center, isn't it?
Yeah. And it's also the medicine of one.
It's also the medicine of one.
It's your I am presence. I am that I am.
I am that I am. And people can say that, but that needs to resonate in the body, doesn't it? You really need to absorb that. And I'm thinking of people who might not be feeling their body as much as they could be, and not realizing what that I am really means.
Oh, it can be very difficult because all these things we collect build a wall between that and our minds, and we get trapped in our minds.
Right.
So you literally, as if you don't know what people don't know what that is. They don't know what it feels like.
Right.
But it's as close as taking a big breath, letting your eyes go out of focus and feeling all the space around you and just let it all go down and sit there. And for 2 seconds, just be quiet. And you're touching it right there.
You're touching it.
So if I can get people just to do 5 seconds while I'm working with them, we can reverse something. Because, if you ever look at people when they tell a painful story and they'll start to tear up and perhaps even cry, but their whole body will start to contract.
Right.
And if I can get them to do the opposite, to let it come in and sort of abide as that spaciousness rather than the one that's contracting, to begin to identify with that simply as taking a breath, feel the space down, empty. So it's go to that empty and let whatever wants to move through you move.
Okay.
And that brings you to the center, because otherwise it's pulling you out of the center because you don't like it.
It's uncomfortable. It can be uncomfortable, can't it?
And what I'm really talking about is self-love.
Yes. Okay.
But not as a concept.
Right.
So it is that sense of, as you say, that center is the heart. And yeah, it's love naturally. But it's, because everybody survives in the opposite way. It's difficult to even know what that is. But it's also what, a lot of the Eastern religions, Buddhism and Advaita, Hinduism and whatnot.
Right.
It's the same thing. They have different names for what they call mental tendencies, are sort of our spins that we get caught up in. And but the key in my work is that there is an emotional energy that it's like, imagine a pool of water and you drop something in it and it ripples out and gets calm.
Yes.
But in life, it's like we're that pool, and when it hits the pool, we don't let it spin out. We contract around it, and that force stays there, and it's a charge inside of us.
Oh.
And then we go through life with these charges inside of us, and when we bump into anything that's similar, we react, which we don't like.
No. And sometimes we might revisit that at the end of the day, what we reacted to, and not really understand ourselves enough to know how we can change that reaction.
Right. And usually people want to change it by thinking about it.
Mm-hmm. And using their brain. Okay. So yeah, I mean, good point. Using their brain instead of letting it resonate with their body and then letting it go and making those different decisions. Yeah.
So imagine that a person has an issue, and their way of surviving is to keep trying to get rid of whatever the energy. Think of somebody who maybe grew up and they didn't feel loved. Mm-hmm. So inside of that person is like this one reaching out for love. Mm-hmm. But they don't like that feeling because it's vulnerable, it's powerless, it's helpless.
Yes.
So it's actually self-hate. So there's that one that's reaching out, that's a little fragile one. And then there's usually an angry one.
In the background.
Yeah. Or all around it. So
all around it, yes.
And each one of those is a different sort of vibration.
Right.
And they begin together. It happens all at the same moment. But the way we survive is to split them so we can control them. Mm-hmm. So the key for me is that rather than sort of contract and push that energy away, you actually find a way to consciously choose to bring it in.
Okay.
And then be that empty, relaxed, breathing, open space to it, and let it do what it wants to do. Let it complete itself. Mm-hmm. And there's always opposites. So there's that angry one in some sense, and then there's the other one that's sort of contracting. Mm-hmm. And that's the key, because the whole world and everything exists because of opposites. Without it, there would be no world.
Right. The yin and the yang, right?
And those two are important in sort of getting what you might call a release, I guess, because you are releasing something that seems like a negative energy. Once that goes through, that becomes a positive contribution to who you are. Mm-hmm. And also, when you think of people can't connect to that sense of I am or that center, it's because they've gathered all this stuff. It's sitting inside of the space of their presence, their body, and they can't get in.
They can't get in. No.
Into the body.
No, they can't. Yeah. They're not really living in their body because it's too uncomfortable.
Right.
Is that right? Mm-hmm.
Yep. And so, in a sense, by moving those energies, you're clearing the way. Mm-hmm. And so that person naturally, let's say one of the things they wanted was to feel more grounded. Well, that's what happens because you're moving through these things that are blocking you from being grounded in your body.
Right.
So, but it's always the same thing. It's find a way to help it move, not to think about it, not to figure it out, not to analyze it. Mm-hmm. That's the booby prize.
Yes.
But sometimes, we need to go through that phase before we can get to the phase where we can not think about it. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. And energy is a very powerful thing. I mean, we carry our energy with us everywhere we go. People know and understand who we are even before we get close to them, because unconsciously, even through our speaking, I'm feeling your energy, you're feeling my energy. And animals really pick up on energy if you're afraid or whatever. And we don't realize how powerful and how outreaching our energy is.
Right.
Right. And people will say, I don't really like her, and they don't know why, but it's that person's energy talking to their energy. Beware. It's there to warn you. Right.
Right. And interestingly enough, some people's way to survive is to hide.
Yes.
They hide their energy.
Mm-hmm.
And then they wonder why nobody sees them.
Yes. And I found in my life is the ones that are the most unapproachable are the ones who need attention the most and love the most and understanding the most, because they're hurting the most.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Because all these things, rather than being that one, letting us feel connected to everything, we're living in separation.
Right.
Which is painful, which is why people take their lives.
Separation in the body, you mean?
Just they feel separate from.
They feel separate.
Yeah, they're not connected to anything, and the pain of that separation and loneliness.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a way that our unmoved, painful history isolates us, and
right.
We want other people to know and understand us, and it's. To the extent that we would like it, nobody can really know exactly how you feel in a way.
No, they can't. And probably they've been hurt by other people. And so they're afraid to tell their story again or whatever, to open up to other people.
Right.
So I'm really glad that you offer. Tell me about the four corners of what is it? Utah, Arizona. What is the corners there? Utah, Arizona.
It's where Utah, Colorado, New Mexico, and Arizona meet.
Right.
And there's actually a plaque there, and you can, take all your hands and your feet and stand in all four places at the same time. Well, that's interesting that you brought that up, because actually, in a way, that's kind of where some of what I'm talking about came out of.
Okay.
And it deals with the Hopi Indians.
Right.
So the Hopis actually live at the center of a cross.
Mm-hmm.
It's not too far from the four corners up on their mesas. And that cross was created when the last world was destroyed. This being the fourth world, there was fire, ice, and a flood. The last one was a flood. So they came across the Pacific Ocean in reed boats and landed in Central America. And they were instructed over these periods of hundreds and thousands of years to carry out these migrations in the four directions to where the land meets the sea, and then to settle at the center.
Okay.
And their job is to keep the world in balance by living at the center. So when you live at your center, that's the best thing you can do for the whole world.
Okay.
Because out of that comes your unique gift to the world.
Okay.
And that's another component of what I do is everybody's got a unique gift.
Yes, of course.
I call it the spine of their life. It's this main thrust that comes out of them. And so when I do a retreat with somebody, that's where we end. What is yours? What is it for you? What is yours? And I have them find a stick they like, and we write it on there. And so that's something they go away with. In a way, they go home with their own circle.
Right.
So they might have rocks they've picked up, and sometimes ribbons we write things on. But it's just to bring it into a physical reality too, as well.
Right. So it's not out there, but you're actually bringing by choosing rocks and different things. Does a person feel like they're kind of labeling their energy based on that, or resonating with that rock? I'm a rock. I carry rocks all the time. Some crystals, actually.
I might take a person out and say, okay, the problem is what you've thrown out of the circle, what you've tried to throw out of the circle. Okay. Now we need you to gather it. Right. So I might take them someplace and leave them to walk a route, and that just have this sense of you're going to pick up what you've thrown out of the circle. Okay. And it might be a cactus that's real spiky. It might be a broken piece of glass, a shotgun shell, but it's just as you describe it. It's a way to give it embodiment, so to speak.
Right. Okay.
And to work not just with your thinking mind, but with your sort of intuitive self. And then you have that object. And when we go to a circle, which is them, the circle is them, but it's a physical circle on the land.
Right.
That they are consciously choosing to bring it back into the circle. Because they have to choose that. If
Powerful.
They do not.
Powerful.
Yeah. Without that choice, I can't do anything for anybody.
Mm-hmm. But what a powerful representation. You must have people healing really. I mean, it's a quick, I'm not going to say quick, but I mean, because you're using, it's a symbol, like it's symbolism. It represents part of that hurt that you might have had. And when you look at that, it's almost like you're putting it there, putting that energy with whatever they've picked up. Is that right? Am I correct?
Right.
Yes, I love it. I love that.
So we're actually trying to amplify the vibration that they're trying to get rid of. But if I can get them to relax around it,
yes,
then it's something just shifts. And it is, when we were talking earlier about people's a sense of their own pain and nobody feels what we do. Actually, the soul journey that I do, which is at my home, where I'm journeying to what they want, and I'm going to run into what is in the way. I'm actually giving voice to all their pain in a way.
Yes.
I might cry, yell, scream, moan. A story unfolds. So there's a component there that sort of helps to overcome that sense of isolation.
Mm-hmm. It's just beautiful. I love it. You're listening to the Rhonda Grant Show right now, whose podcast has been treated with digital audio health by Symmetrix. And I am speaking with Clay Lomakayu. And I met Clay's voice by listening to audiobooks on Audible. And I loved his voice so much. I was intrigued by his voice that I actually went to Audible and searched him so that I could purchase more books. And I love the subject matter anyway, and purchase more books so I could listen to him. And I'm sure that people are loving your voice today, Clay. Can you let people know how they can reach you?
Well, I have a website, Medicine of One, if people are looking for one of my services, or just I have people, that do contact me that are audiobook people and just want to thank me, or there's also my Medicine of One YouTube channel that has hundreds of free audios for people, as well as some of my own videos where I'm in front of the camera talking about what I do.
Yes.
So, and obviously, as you just described, just going on Audible and type in Lomakayu. But the best way to get me is email through my website. That's the quickest way usually.
Mm-hmm. And I listened to One Noble Truth, and that you're an author and you wrote that book. You've written a few books, haven't you?
Yeah. One Noble Truth is sort of first I wrote Medicine of One, and it's got everything in it. And then I decided to take a different through line and make it shorter. And that's One Noble Truth. And the One Noble Truth is to live at the center.
Yes. I'm going to listen to it again. I just loved it. You just have a magical gift of teaching, and then you put your voice to it, and it's just it's wonderful. Thank you. Yeah, thank you so much. I'm so intrigued by you. So one of the things that I like to ask my guests on the show is if you feel that you've been called to your journey, to what you're doing today and what you have been doing.
I suppose in a way, but I wouldn't put it that way.
Okay.
Because in the sense of living at the center, and the spine of your life is sort of what your gift to the world, the way that it happens is by you getting out of the way.
Okay. And
so if I label myself as the feeling of having been called, there's somebody in the way that's being called.
Okay.
So I just think of it as, in some sense, this is what I'm supposed to be doing.
Yeah, and I think that's basically what I mean is that we all have a journey, and somehow we end up where we are today, in 2022. And when you look back over your life, if all of those things didn't happen when they happened, and the people that you met, you may not be where you are. You might have taken a different road. And
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. No, my life, that's where everything has come from. And it's not and the thing is that, initially we think life's about getting what you want.
Mm-hmm.
But the fact is that the biggest changes in life are when you lose what you love.
Mm-hmm. It's in the pain, isn't it?
Yeah. And so how you meet your losses determines how much peace you have.
Oh my goodness. Can you say that again?
How you meet your losses determines how much peace you have.
Wow.
So in other words, literally lost my dog, Sundance.
Yes. Sundance last week.
He just passed away this last week, and I consciously try to actually physically bury my dogs because it forces me to be with the tangibility of death,
right,
and loss. And as it's happening, I consciously just breathe and I'm aware and let my body shake and cry and do whatever it needs to do.
Mm-hmm.
So rather than to avoid it,
right,
I encourage it. So if I sort of have a thought of him and it makes me feel a little tearful, I actually take myself to that moment when I looked in his eyes, and I just breathed and I let myself feel that. So that's really the whole key. It's like, rather than pushing it away and letting it own you,
right,
you choose to own it with love.
Right. And your dogs are they part wolf?
Some of them have been. Yeah, they're in the realm that they're very closely related to wolves. Many of my dogs lately have been like Akitas, which are sort of a Japanese type wolf that's been domesticated.
Okay. And they help with your clients.
Yeah. Their presence can be the key for people. Just maybe if we're out on a walk and they seem to stick close to that person and it feels like they help them, or in the house, they sit down. When I do the soul journeys, Beauty leaves the room when I'm doing it, and then she comes back exactly when I'm done and sits next to the person, gives them a lick. And some people are afraid of dogs too.
I am.
And and I've seen people just totally get over that.
Mm-hmm.
So actually, I just had somebody come to me. They had called me up. They were visiting the area. They didn't really look at what I do or anything. They had been going all through Sedona trying to do this and do that and have somebody do something for them and fix them.
Okay.
And the first thing, she shows up at my door and my dog's there, and she literally almost panics.
Yeah.
And I said, okay, there's the problem.
Yes.
Fear.
Mm-hmm.
That's the one. No matter what it is we contract around it, there's fear. So how do you love your fear?
Oh, there's a question. How do you love your fear?
Well, it's that old thing, is that who you really are is love.
Right.
You are not fear. So love is the big spacious one, and the fear is just a contraction or movement in the circle. So to be the circle to the fear is to love it.
So you love your fear because it is a message, right?
It's fear is a vibration.
It's a vibration. Yeah, because it's picked up by the dogs. Yes.
So you want to let every vibration move.
Okay.
But in this sense of bringing something into the circle, bringing the vibration, bringing the feeling in, relaxing around it, the other key is you have to give up what you believe.
Right.
If you keep believing what you believe about the story,
mm-hmm.
I'm a victim.
It's your story. Yeah. It's your story that you're carrying with you wherever you go.
Then you'll bring it back.
You bring it back. Yes.
But it doesn't mean some part of you, so the you as the circle is your I am, is what I call the big I.
Okay.
It's like a line with two lines that connect heaven and earth.
Mm-hmm.
But inside the circle, all our little stories and spins are the little eyes. So the key is for the big eye to love the little eyes.
Okay.
And the little eye is like a line with a dot with the head spinning.
The line with the dot, the head spinning. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, what a great analogy. And I'm hoping that our listeners are really resonating with, and they'll probably have to listen to the podcast a couple of times because you're teaching us so many things, and it's remarkable, and people may have shifts while you're talking.
Absolutely.
You see?
Yes.
And I'm hoping because like I think back to me not even knowing what the center was a couple of decades ago, and I think back to where I might have been living in my body. Well, I would have been living in my head, right? My head was trying to get that figured out instead of me having that resonate in my body. And so shifting is good. And there are people that are going to actually be in tears from some of the things that you said, because you're asking them about their body, their heart, and their energies and things like that, and using things to represent pain from the past and things like that.
Right.
Hopefully they went out and picked up a rock or something so they could label it with something. And right.
And the circle is a tool. You can actually go get a round rug and bring your circle into your home.
Yes.
And remember, the circle is just your quiet I am presence. So you sit in the center and you bring in those things. And so you sit in your circle.
Yes.
And my circles are out in the spacious Southwest with the huge sky. So
yes.
it's that invitation to be that big, that spacious.
Yes.
Spaciousness is love.
Mm-hmm. Wonderful. Wonderful. I mean, one of the other questions I asked my guests on the show, and you've had a lot of them, but what extraordinary discovery have you found in your life?
That's always,
there could have been a few of them.
Yeah. I guess it's, I can't, when I'm asked that question, the use of that, like I mean, there are always a series of these ahas, but
right.
It's not so much like this mind-blowing moment of realization for me. Mm-hmm. It's actually hard for me to pick something.
Yes, it is. And the thing is that it can be just as simple. I mean, one person said source and they checked dictionaries, and they just went all the way back through to old dictionaries to find out the meaning of source. And then it came right down to love. It came down to heart centered. And that is your source. That's where we come from, is our source. And so, I mean, it can be as simple as that. I mean, I would have a hard time trying to pin it down too. But,
for me, it's not some instant or something.
Right.
It's something that happens through time.
Through time, yes.
And for me, one of the biggest influences has been when I moved to Arizona.
Yes.
And everything that I had ever done in my whole life started to come together.
When you went to Arizona.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All the skills that I had developed, whether with my voice or I was in theater for a while, or and then I was a guide out on the land going to ancient sites. And so the sacredness and the Hopi and all these things started to come together. And but the land, being the connection with the land, sort of helped that really to happen.
Right. And is there a special energy at these four corners? Like, is is there like a sacred area or?
So are you asking me about the actual Four Corners? Are you asking
that
me about
area?
Sedona? Because there's a difference.
What would you like to talk about?
I mean, Sedona is very popular and actually very commercialized for its vortexes. Okay. That's not the Four Corners.
No, that's not the Four Corners.
Well, it's the sacred land, the Four Corners, the ancient Anasazi dwellings, the ancient ones. If you travel through the Southwest, it's just got a magic about it.
Yes.
And in all those 4 states, and it some people do actually call that the heart center of the earth. With Sedona, this is actually a new idea for Sedona.
Okay.
It began in about 1980. Before that, there was no talk of vortexes.
Okay.
And it began with one person, which is often how things happen.
Yes.
Somebody gives a mountain a name and it sticks.
Yes. Yeah.
And people visit and have experiences and the energy grows and it's like myth in the making that's real.
Okay.
And so this Sedona is naturally spectacular and beautiful and has, energetic anomalies probably that partly are due to the layering of the rocks and whatnot, and underground water. But these places are all over the world.
Yes.
Sedona doesn't have a monopoly on it. The unfortunately thing about Sedona is it's become so highly commercialized.
Oh, yes.
I haven't lived in Sedona for over 20 years. I live about 20 miles away in Cottonwood, and I rarely get to Sedona. My land is just a few miles down the road. I'm out in the national forest, and I have my wonderful sacred places, some places where it's all this bone white rock, or I go down in the river in a canyon called Canyon of the Holy Beings, and these volcanic cliffs with these figures in them and the river. And so I stay out of the busy stuff.
Well, it sounds beautiful where you are.
Yeah, it is.
It's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Arizona. I love Arizona. I actually have a song. I think it's on my YouTube channel. It's called Arizona, Arizona. And it's my love song to Arizona. So I sing too.
Good. I'll check out your YouTube channel.
Yeah,
definitely. And I asked the guests to check out. It's Medicine of One is the name of the
That's
YouTube
right.
channel.
Yeah, that's the channel name.
Right. Okay.
And there's audiobooks, but there's also my own. If you see a picture of me, then I'm in front of the camera. Otherwise, it's an audiobook probably.
Right. Well, I've so enjoyed talking to you today. I've looked forward to this for a long time, and I'm so happy that you accepted my invitation to come on my podcast. It means so much to me.
Well, it was good to spend some time with you.
Thank you. Theme song for the Rhonda Grant Show, Sun on the Water, is composed and performed by my friend John Park Wheeler. This is Rhonda Grant with the Rhonda Grant Show, author of Magical Forces Within, Extraordinary Discoveries in an Ordinary Life, inviting you to look for the magical forces within yourself today and every day. Thanks so much for tuning in.
Thanks for tuning in to the Rhonda Grant Show with your host, Rhonda Grant. If you would like to find out more information about Rhonda and her upcoming guests and the work that she does, go to her website, rhondagrantauthor.com. That's rhondagrantauthor.com.